I always thought if my life ever truly changed, it would come with sound glass breaking, thunder rolling, maybe a dramatic scream. But instead, it came in a whisper. "Don't react. Wait until your mom leaves," my husband said, frozen in place in my parents' attic. I didn't ask questions. I didn't blink. I just walked downstairs and asked my mother for something, anything to get her out of the room. And when I returned, I saw it. A cardboard box. A hidden compartment. A folder. My name on the front. That was Easter. 3 days later, my parents were calling their lawyer in a panic. Everything I knew about who I was, my family, my sister, my childhood fractured in that moment. This story isn't about revenge. It's about the truth. And what happens when the truth is no longer willing to stay buried. I never liked the attic. Even as a child, I felt like that space held more than dusty garlands and half-broken ornaments. It always smelled like insulation and secrets, things no one talked about, things no one wanted to move. We were there for Easter weekend. My mom had roped us into finally cleaning out the storage, like she'd been threatening to do for years. She made it sound like a group activity, something wholesome, family bonding. It wasn't. Ethan, my husband, being the overly generous soul he is, offered to help. "No one wants to lift bins in a hot attic," I'd said quietly as we unpacked. "I do," he said. "You'll feel better when it's done." I didn't. Not yet. Up there, under dim bulb light and a low ceiling, my mother was humming something by Elton John as she wrapped ceramic bunnies in newspaper. I was untangling yellowed extension cords. Ethan was quiet, just sorting, moving, stacking. Until he wasn't. He stopped. Completely. I looked up. His back was to me, crouched behind a stack of boxes labeled Christmas, fragile. He didn't move, didn't speak. "Ethan?" I called. He slowly turned his head, not fully, just enough for me to see his face. It was pale, rigid. He walked over and crouched next to me, his eyes scanning my mom across the attic, then dropping back to meet mine. "Don't react," he whispered. "Wait until your mom leaves." That's when I knew. This wasn't about a mouse nest or old letters. This was serious. I could feel it. That cold pressure under my sternum. Like something ancient and buried had just shifted. I didn't argue. I didn't ask. Instead, I walked to the attic entrance like I was in a trance. Calm, casual. "Mom?" I called down. "Do you know if we still have the vacuum with the hose? Might be better than the broom for this stuff." She perked up immediately. "Of course. I think it's in the hallway closet," and sang her way down the stairs like this was just another spring cleaning chore, not the first tremor of an earthquake. When I turned back, Ethan had already stepped aside. There, behind where the boxes had been, was a section of the wall I'd never noticed. Like someone had patched it up years ago but never finished the job. A rough seam, poor insulation, a few folded rugs thrown in front like camouflage, and behind that, a box. Plain, cardboard, no label, just sitting there, as if waiting. My hands shook when I reached for it. Not because I knew what was inside, but because something in me already knew that once I opened it, nothing would be the same. Not ever again. I pulled the box out carefully, as if it might disintegrate in my hands. It wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light either. It had that kind of weight that isn't about mass, just meaning. The kind that presses into your palms and whispers, "You're not ready for this." The flaps were taped, but sloppily, like someone had opened it in a hurry and resealed it without care. I sat back on my heels, wiped my palms on my jeans, and looked at Ethan. He didn't say a word, just gave a small nod. So I opened it. Inside was one thing, a cream-colored folder, not a manila one, not a school project or some forgotten tax document. This was formal. It looked intentional. I lifted it gently. The first thing I saw was my name. Amelia Graham, typed in bold capital letters. My chest tightened. I turned it over, half expecting to see medical records or school enrollment or some old application form, but there was no subtitle, just a date, printed in smaller font under my name, 19 years ago. A buzzing sound started in my ears. My heart thumped against my ribs, and it felt like the attic had become too small to hold the air I needed. I opened the folder slowly. The first page had a heading. Legal, clean, printed in that cold serif font lawyers love. I didn't understand the terminology at first, some kind of estate language. A trust agreement. Ethan leaned in and gently pointed to a section halfway down. And there it was. This irrevocable trust is established in the name of Amelia Graham, born March 3rd, 1993, beneficiary of the estate of Sylvia Holloway. I blinked hard, rereading the sentence like it might change, but it didn't. Sylvia. My great-aunt. The woman who smelled like lemon soap and gave me books and birthday cards with folded 20s inside. The only person in my childhood who made me feel seen. The folder said she wasn't my aunt. She was my grandmother. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My throat had closed. Every piece of air I tried to swallow caught somewhere in the middle. There was more. Dozens of pages. Legal filings, notarized signatures, distribution terms, a clause about guardianship, and a letter, tucked neatly between 2 pages like someone had wanted it to be found eventually. My hands were trembling as I unfolded it. I didn't even read the whole thing right away. Just the first line. My darling Amelia, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and the people raising you have decided the time is right to tell you the truth. But they hadn't. Not when I was 18. Not 19. Not even now, at 30. If Ethan hadn't found this, I might never have known. I stared down at the paper. The words blurred, then cleared again, sharp and cold and final. This wasn't just a family secret. It was theft. It was betrayal. And it had my name printed right on top. I didn't say much on the drive home. Ethan kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting gently over mine. The folder sat on my lap, like a live wire. I couldn't look at it anymore. I already knew what it said, what it meant. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was protective. Like Ethan was guarding space for me to fall apart if I needed to. But I didn't fall apart. Not yet. I just kept seeing her face. Samantha, my older sister. The golden one. She was 4 years older than me, but always seemed like she belonged to a different galaxy, one with light and applause and certainty. From the moment I was old enough to understand words, I also understood that Samantha was the benchmark. Samantha liked math. I liked stories. Samantha won awards. I got most improved. Samantha launched a business before she was 25. I figured out how to survive quietly. It wasn't open cruelty. My parents didn't say she was better. They just acted like everything about me was a charming footnote to the main narrative. Samantha was a star. I was the good sport. The sweet one. The one who helped carry trays. Took the photos, smiled in the background, and Samantha loved it. She once laughed when I told her I'd finally paid off my car. "Oh my God, that's adorable," she said, sipping her matcha like it was champagne. "You're still in that tiny apartment, right?" She didn't mean it like an insult. That was the worst part. She didn't have to mean it, because she believed it. She believed she was ahead. Deservedly. Naturally. And my mom? She didn't just love Samantha, she studied her. She followed her on Instagram with 2 separate accounts. She quoted her newsletters at family dinners. She framed her coaching certificates and hung them in the hallway. "She's changing lives," she said once, with tears in her eyes, like Samantha was the second coming of Oprah. Sometimes she'd ask about my job, but only in passing. "Still doing the writing thing?" she'd say, even when I'd already told her 3 times that I worked in editorial at a nonprofit. It didn't matter. Her eyes would glaze over halfway through my answer anyway. But now I knew there was a fund. A trust. Money meant for me. Set aside by Sylvia, my real grandmother. And for some reason, I'd never been told. But someone had been told. Someone had gone to college without student loans. Someone had launched a business with impressive startup capital. Someone had a website, a marketing team, a lifestyle brand with filtered lighting and #wisdom. Samantha. That was the moment the suspicion took root. What if she'd been building her empire with my foundation? What if her spotlight wasn't just luck, talent, or timing? What if it had been stolen? The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted to start a war, but because I was tired of being the one who never asked for too much. I showed her the folder, the trust documents, the letter from Sylvia. She read everything in silence, then looked up and said calmly, "They were legally obligated to disclose this on your 18th birthday. They didn't," I said. She nodded. "Then we'll start with a formal demand for accounting. They'll be required to report every cent, every asset, every decision they made on your behalf." The words felt clinical. Clean. Too sterile for something that was breaking me open from the inside. But I nodded. "Do it." The letter went out 2 days later. It was short, professional, firm. It might as well have been a grenade, because on the 3rd morning my phone rang. Carol. I stared at the screen. I thought about letting it go to voicemail. About not giving her the chance to twist this into another emotional debt I owed her. But I answered. Her voice came in sharp and tight, like a violin string wound too tight. "Are you serious?" No hello. No surprise. Just that immediate tone of offense, as if she was the one who'd been wronged. "Excuse me?" I said. This letter," she hissed. "From your lawyer? After everything we've done for you? You're going to sue us?" I didn't answer. Her voice rose. "You ungrateful little girl. You wouldn't even exist if it weren't for us." And there it was, the line. The one I'd heard my whole life in different forms. "You're lucky we raised you. You owe us. You wouldn't have survived without us." But this time, something in me snapped. "Carol," I said, flat and cold. "Don't call me that right now." There was a pause. Then I heard another voice in the background. "Mitch, tell her we'll fight it. She's not destroying everything." Of course they were on speaker. You're not a victim, Amelia, Carol barked. We did what we had to do. It wasn't that much money. I almost laughed. Not that much money like it was pocket change, like it hadn't shaped two lives in completely opposite directions. I'll see how much it was when the accounting comes in, I said. Oh, please, she snapped. You think a few dollars is going to fix you? You've always been broken. That's when I hung up. Not in a dramatic slam the phone way, just a quiet, clean click. Ethan looked up from the kitchen. He didn't say a word, just handed me a glass of water, like he already knew everything. And maybe he did, because when someone looks at you in your silence and doesn't flinch, that's how you know you're no longer alone in it. They didn't call first. They never did. They just knocked 3 sharp raps on the front door, like they owned the wood, the hinges, the air on the other side. I knew it was them before I looked. Carol stood there with a Tupperware container. Cookies, probably. The kind she used to bake when I had a fever or cried too long. Back when love came in, sweet things you had to swallow fast, before the guilt kicked in. Mitch stood behind her, arms folded, eyes flat. His face was unreadable but not unfamiliar. That blank masculine disapproval I'd seen for years. We thought we'd talk, Carol said with a smile so forced it could have cracked her teeth. Face to face, like a family. Ethan stayed in the next room. He knows when I need to be alone, and when I need to not feel alone. I let them in, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to see them when they lied to my face. Carol sat down like she'd never been yelled at, like nothing was broken. She placed the cookies on the coffee table and clasped her hands like we were praying. I think this whole situation has gotten out of hand, she began. I didn't respond. This lawsuit, she continued, it's not necessary. It's dramatic, hurtful. I tilted my head. Is it? Yes, she snapped, then caught herself, softened again. We made choices. We did our best. You made choices for me. She waved a hand. You were a child. You wouldn't have understood. You were supposed to tell me when I turned 18. She blinked, then scoffed. We didn't want to traumatize you. You were fragile back then. Mitch finally spoke. We gave you a life. I stood up. Where did the money go? Carol blinked. What? The trust. The assets Sylvia left for me. Where did it go? The pause that followed was long enough to be a confession. I stepped closer. Did it go to Samantha? Carol's jaw clenched. You think we're going to justify every financial decision we made for you? You mean every financial decision you made without me? Mitch's voice came low and final. It went to someone who deserved it. There it was, not wrapped in guilt, not softened by apology, just naked, bitter truth. They never saw me as deserving. They never intended to tell me. To them, I was a placeholder, a burden with a smile. I walked to the door and opened it. Neither of them moved. You're not our daughter anymore, Carol said finally, standing. Hope you're happy. She left the cookies behind. The lid was pink. It matched the sweater she'd worn the day she told me I was lucky to be raised by someone like her. They stepped out. I didn't say a word. I just closed the door and locked it. Behind me, the silence wasn't empty. It was mine. I didn't respond to their parting words. I didn't eat the cookies either. That night, I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and typed one line to my lawyer. Proceed. Include Samantha. No anger. No dramatic typing. Just clarity. Ethan didn't ask what happened when they came. He just poured me tea and sat across from me, like he was prepared to sit there forever if I needed him to. 2 days later, an email came from Carol and Mitch's family attorney. The subject line read, Settlement Proposal. The offer? $150, zero wired directly if I dropped the case. No admission of wrongdoing, no mention of Sylvia, just money cold, fast, silent. The last line made my stomach turn. You were never the ambitious one. This is more than enough. I didn't reply. Because that's the kind of line you carry with you, not to dwell in it, but to know exactly who you're dealing with. 3 days later, I saw her, Samantha. Her face filled my screen. It was one of those shiny women-to-watch video features, a glowing profile piece filmed in her office, clean white shelves, faux plants, soft lighting, and a tasteful mug that read CEO Fuel. She smiled into the camera. Her voice was calm, measured, rehearsed. No one gave me anything, she said. This business was built from grit, failure, persistence. I stared at the screen, at her eyeliner. Her curated pause, her perfectly stacked books titled things like The Alignment Method and Habits of the Magnetic Mind. And I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just closed the tab, turned to Ethan and said, We're going all the way. The court date came quicker than I thought it would. I didn't go to every hearing, just the one that mattered, the one where my lawyer laid it all out. The trust records, the signatures, the wire transfers, scholarship funds labeled under my name that paid for Samantha's Ivy League degree. Marketing budgets drawn directly from the estate. Shell accounts with vague names all linked back to my trust. Samantha's lawyer tried the "she didn't know" angle. She was a minor, he said. She had no say in how the money was used. But the records showed otherwise. She'd known. Emails, authorizations, even her startup seed funding pitch deck listed legacy family support as a primary backing source. So no, she hadn't just benefited. She'd built herself out of what was stolen from me. The judge, a woman with a spine like stone, read the verdict calmly, almost bored. Samantha's business would be liquidated. What remained would go to me. Carol and Mitch were ordered to pay restitution. They didn't look at me when the ruling was read. They just sat there, still, small, ashen. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, not for what I'd lost, but for what had always been mine. It didn't happen with a bang. No applause, no victory music, no dramatic gasp from the courtroom, just a gavel, a nod, and a few words read in perfect legal monotone. But to me, it was the sound of something unlocking. The judge's voice didn't waver. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. The business will be dissolved, remaining assets transferred to the rightful beneficiary, restitution to be paid by the guardians as stipulated. That was it. Carol didn't cry. She sat completely still, hands folded in her lap like a child pretending to behave. Her mouth didn't twitch, but I saw it in her eyes. That old, quiet panic, the kind she used to hide with casseroles and fake smiles. Mitch just stared ahead like he was watching a building burn down but still hoping someone else would bring the hose. Samantha wasn't there. She didn't need to be. Her lawyers took the hit. Her silence took the shape of absence. And I walked out with Ethan. He didn't say anything until we were outside, where the air didn't smell like old paper and generational rot. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. Getting there. The money came in 2 weeks later. The transfer confirmation pinged on my phone while I was loading the dishwasher. I stared at the number for a long time. It wasn't everything. There were legal fees, taxes, parts that had been spent years ago on things I'd never touch. But it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to breathe. Enough to know I hadn't imagined the imbalance of my childhood, the weight of always being the one in the background while Samantha stood under the spotlight funded by my inheritance. The media didn't cover it much. Just a quiet line in the local paper. Wellness startup to close following internal restructuring. No public scandal. No viral apology. Just gone. They sold the house a month later. Quietly. I only found out because a former neighbor texted me. Big moving truck, gone by nightfall. Carol and Mitch downsized to a modest 2-bedroom 2 towns over. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Word was, Samantha moved back in with them. She called it a season of recalibration on one of her last Instagram posts before she deleted the account entirely, which is funny, because recalibration was also the name of the overpriced online course she once sold to broken-hearted women trying to find themselves. Now she gets to live it. I got one final email from Carol. No subject line. No greeting. Just 8 words. You destroyed everything. You were never one of us. I didn't reply. I didn't even read it twice, because here's the truth. I was never trying to belong. I was just trying to be seen. And now, I don't need to be seen by them anymore. I see myself. I didn't throw the letter away. Sylvia's letter. It sits in a drawer by my bed now, folded into a small, soft square. The paper has a crease down the middle and a faded corner where my thumb always lands when I open it. I don't read it every night, only on the ones when the silence gets too loud. When the world feels heavier than it should, or when I catch myself slipping into old patterns, waiting for someone to grant me permission to exist. Those are the nights I unfold it again. My darling Amelia, you deserve to know who you are. Simple words. But they anchor me in ways no money ever could. We moved last month. A smaller house, nothing fancy. But it has big windows that spill morning light all over the kitchen floor, and a quiet yard that smells like honeysuckle in the spring. Ethan cooks more now. I laugh more. I breathe without bracing for comparison. I didn't use the money to make a point. I didn't build a company, or launch a platform, or post a single thing online. Not yet, because for the first time, I don't feel like I have anything to prove. I don't need to rewrite my story in bold headlines or branded language. I just needed the truth, and now I have it. Samantha hasn't reached out. I'm not expecting her to. Carol and Mitch haven't either, not since that last email. And honestly, that's fine. Let their silence keep them company. I found one of Celia's old friends. Her name was Marisol. We had coffee in a sunlit cafe with lemon cake and no expectations. She showed me a photo from the 90s, a young woman with wild curls, ink-stained fingers, and a laugh that looked like it broke open rooms. That was my mother, my real mother. Celia, she adored you, Marisol said, her voice trembling. She used to write poems about the way you smiled in your sleep. I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes and tried to remember a time when I felt that kind of love, wordless, quiet, foundational. Maybe I couldn't recall it. But now, I can carry it. There's nothing left to fight. No more battles, no more courtrooms, no more trying to wedge myself into a family mold that was never shaped for me. I'm not rebuilding something new yet. I'm standing still, letting the ground settle beneath me. And for the first time in 30 years, I know it's mine. Not because someone gave it to me, not because I earned it through perfection or sacrifice, but because it always was, and now, so am I. As someone who lived 30 years not knowing the truth about where I came from, I've learned something I hope older generations will hear with open hearts. Silence is not always protection. Many of us grew up believing that what's hidden is best left buried, that shielding children from pain was love, but the truth, no matter how hard, is a form of love too. When you hide someone's past, you don't just protect them from the pain, you also deny them the foundation they need to stand strong. My story is proof that it's never too late to uncover the truth, and never too late to reclaim your voice. To those who raised children, mentored others, or helped shape a life, ask yourself, have you left behind honesty or just comfort? Because dignity comes from truth. If this story made you feel something, share your own reflections in the comments. What lessons did you learn about family, legacy, or truth? And please subscribe for more stories that matter. Your voice, your story, and your presence, all of it still counts.